is Northwest.
Meeting is now streaming. There's somebody on Samsung SM. Please, if you put your name there, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and speak.
It must have been a mistake by that person.
You think so?
Okay. Yep. Just lower the hand. Okay.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just feel like saying Happy New Year again. Doesn't it feel like that? Like, we're still in the mood to, greet each other and welcome each other into the new year, even though it seems like the year is just on speedo. It's running. But welcome. Welcome to Medical Mondays with Dr. O, to another exciting evening. I'm Dr. Toyin Okwesomi, popularly known as Dr. O. And I'm always excited to be on this platform, to be with you, my family, my Medical Mondays family, because I learned so much on the forum and have the opportunity also to give something. So tonight is a very special one. We have one of the family, our very own Professor Dr. Luguterah, who is just one word, amazing. And without much ado, I'm just going to share with you before she even starts talking tonight that you all know she's a professor, an educator, and a writer. She's written 2 books geared to children, but now she's just written brand new, out of the mill, a 3rd book. And I don't know if, I have to, Dr. Jagwe, help me. Okay, here we go. This is the book. I bought my copy. And she didn't even know that I got my copy. She wrote a 3rd book that is geared to adults. And I'm excited because this is about her life, and in a selfless way has utilized it to actually impact or attempt to impact the rest of us. And she's going to talk about that tonight. So who is she? Who is Dr. Luguterah? Dr. Mercy Luguterah is a Ghanaian American Montessori educator. She's also a writer who has devoted 19 years of her professional career working with children ages 9 and below. She obtained her doctorate degree in behavioral sciences, a master's degree in social work, and a 2nd master's in development studies. It has been her lifelong passion to impact young lives through storytelling. Dr. Luguterah has been an adjunct faculty member at University of Maryland Global Campus, the UMGC, since 2013. She's an avid blogger, and you can check her out at logosdesk.com. I'm going to put that in the chat box. Her interests include community service, singing, and fitness. I will add also that her interest includes giving, just giving. She has given on this platform her time to counseling people who need it privately. She would private chat me and say, I'll take them on. I'll cancel that person. And she does it diligently with all her heart without getting paid a dime. She's a gem in our community. She's a gift to us. And I am so honored to introduce to you or reintroduce to you and, yield the floor to Professor Dr. Luguterah. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. O, for having me back here. It's always an honor to be able to share in any small way. And thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Like you've heard, what I do, I enjoy working with children and adults. And I like to be called Mercy, except when I'm in professional circles, then I have to use my titles. But it's always a pleasure to be here. And tonight I thought, the beginning of the year, what is it that people normally like to do? What would be a relevant message to pass across? And I just thought about the word reflection and resetting, right? In January, a lot of people like to set goals or plans or things like that. And a lot of the times, our goals are maybe financial goals or academic goals or different kinds of goals that we want to set. But I think that it's also important to do all these things, but also to include your emotional wellness, emotional goals, goals for self-care, mental health, all these things that are very important because you need yourself to be able to achieve all those goals. So I thought reflections and reset is also an opportunity to rethink certain things, to reconsider, right? And so I put it together to say maybe we can talk about that. I can talk for about 30 minutes or so, and a very laid back elementary presentation. But hopefully, it is understanding enough, and we all can get something from it, including myself. So I started with this picture of reflection, and I reminded myself of when I was in secondary school in Ghana. One of the tasks a teacher asked us to accomplish was to look in the mirror and draw what you see of yourself, right? And I'm not a great artist, but I had to try to come up with something that I could see in the mirror that looked like me. In the beginning, it did not exactly look like me, but with a lot of hard work, eventually it began to look something like me. But the goal was draw what you see, right? A reflection of yourself. And I think that sometimes we are very quick to go through life or to go through things without taking the time to reflect. So I wanted tonight to just remind us all that it's important to reflect. And sometimes when you look at yourself in the mirror, when you think you're dressed up, you might see that maybe you missed a button or something is not aligned properly, and so you want to make the necessary adjustments after you've been able to reflect or to view yourself in the mirror. So I hope that as we go through this presentation of reflection and resetting, we all can get something from it. So there's a quick 30-second reflection exercise I want to ask us all. Just take a pause and think back. When was the last time you actually took a moment to self-reflect? This time, not by looking at yourself in the mirror, but just pondering over who you are, what you want for yourself, in your own quiet time, just pausing and really thinking about who you are, how you see yourself, and how differently you want to see yourself. Like I said, we can be very, very busy just going through life, but when you pause and take a deep breath, even if it's for 30 seconds a day, just for yourself, it can make a lot of difference. It can be the difference between you saying something or not saying something, right? It can make a huge difference, although it's just 30 seconds. So I encourage that we do this often. Just pause and reflect and just see where your mind is and where your mental space is. And that can be very helpful. So I tried to look up synonyms for reflection, right? And it was interesting what I found, right? So reflections can be consideration, but I like the word meditation or deliberation, right? So you take the time. Deliberation connotes that you are taking the time, you're being mindful, you're taking the time to ponder over something. It's not that you don't know at all, but you just want to recheck. You want to really reassess, and just to see if you're actually in the right place. You're mussing over something. You're forming an impression. Something is being pressed upon your mind. Impressed upon your mind. You're deliberating. You're meditating. You're taking time out. You're being very, very intentional. And I also wanted to look at synonyms for resetting, and I like what I found. It says renovate, reshape, rework. And I got to thinking about even our own homes, right? Normally, if you're in a home I haven't come across anyone who's been in a home for 30 years and did not remodel or rechange or change anything, right? Sometimes in 2 years or 5 years, you might see a crack in the wall or paint coming, or there's something going on that you need to rework. you need to remold. But sometimes you might say, I don't like my floors. I have wooden floors. I want to switch to a different kind of floor. I want to change my curtains. I want to change, the paint, something. You change something after a while because you found yourself in a certain space and you feel like you're ready for something different. And so you're trying to reshape, you're trying to remold, right? In the physical. And there's the same way in our mind space also. There's nothing like, oh, I know this, and so I'm not going to learn anymore, or that's it for the rest of my life. There's always opportunity, especially now, to do a lot of reflection and to also do a lot of resetting, because sometimes what we know may not be the full information. It may not even be accurate. So it's important that we are constantly reflecting and resetting and making sure that we're in the right path. Why reflect? Why reset? Why is it important? Because there can be no significant change if you don't intentionally reflect and reset, right? And when it comes to your emotional wellness, it's at the core of everything. It's important. The more you reflect, the healthier we become, whether it's your eating pattern, your sleeping pattern, the programs you're watching, things you're spending your time with, the friends you hang around with, the music you listen to. All these things are important. When you actually take time to reflect and to reset, it can be the answer to a lot of the things or challenges that you might be experiencing. It could also open up new opportunities for you because you can see where maybe you can use your time better. You can see where maybe you need to walk away from certain things or you need to walk towards certain things. But you wouldn't know that if you're not intentionally reflecting and making the effort to reset. So the question becomes, what exactly are we reflecting on and what are we resetting? Our values, what we think is important to us. A lot of the times we have borrowed values or values have been imposed upon us. But it gets to a time where you reflect to say, these things that I consider my values, are they still important to me? Do I need to change? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to do something different? You just don't want to assume or take on someone's values. You want to have them because you believe that they are important, they are central to you. Behaviors, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, right? And especially for a lot of us that are coming from different cultures into the US, this is actually important. Where I come from in Ghana, I know that at some point it was okay for people to, you're out in town and maybe you need to use a washroom, you can't find any, you can go on the side of the street and make that your washroom, right? And no one says anything, you can get away with it. But if you try that here, there's a problem. You cannot do that here, right? So it's not acceptable behavior. And that's just a small example, but there are many, many things where it might be acceptable when you're a certain age, but as you get older, it's not acceptable. And you need to be able to reevaluate that, because when you don't do that, then you are not setting yourself up for success and you're going to get into a lot of unnecessary trouble. Also, our communication skills, how we communicate with people, even in our own children. When they're young, there's a different way you communicate with them. As they get older, that communication skill has to change because they're getting older and the dynamics is different. But we wouldn't know that until we reflect and we study to know what is the best way to engage with people at different stages of their life. How about the knowledge that we know, right? I've always known that we had 9 planets. We even had a song, about the 9 planets that they taught us in primary school. But now they tell us it's 8, right? Because Pluto is no longer a planet. Pluto has been demoted to something else. I don't know what it's called now. But you see how even things that we think that were certain or were sure, we have to make a shift, right? Because someone is looking at things and reassessing things and saying it's time to change. Next is the relationships we form and keep. The relationships we have around us, are they healthy? Are they good for us? Where we are, where we want to go? Are they good for us? Are we good for ourselves? The way we relate to ourselves, is it good enough? Do we need to change something? Do we need to be aware around us, things that are going on, right? All these things come into place. And the dynamics between ourselves, children, and spouses, how does that impact our overall wellness? Because believe it or not, all of these things play an important role in your mindset, how you carry yourself, how you view yourself, and how you engage with people. So as much as it's good to set financial goals, you also want to set goals where you're looking at the numbers, not just on paper, but the numbers in your heart, in your emotions, in your mind, because those numbers are equally important. And then the last point is nature versus nurture. How are you interacting between these two, right? And I'll tell you why this is important. Every single one of us, if you're looking at how behavior is formed in two ways. You have nature, which is, your genetic predisposition. We refer to that as nature. And then you have nurture, which is the environment you are placed in, right? So someone can be born with maybe they might have a genetic, maybe something that has got to do with diabetes, or some kind of trait, a negative trait in the family. But the environment you find yourself in can help you even overcome or greatly minimize the impact of nature. So that tells us that nurture, which is your environment, is very, very crucial. It can make you, it can break you. More than nature, nurture, the things around you, your home, your people, your school, the things you interact with consistently, that is nurture. The food you eat, the places you go, the things you open up your mind to, your culture, your religion, your faith, your belief, all these things are part of nurture, and all these things determine your behavior or your human experience. And so if we're going to change anything, we need to know that we are made of these two things, and we can always use our environment to overcome or greatly minimize the impact of nature. So you can have very strong genes of health, of wellness. Your family might have great metabolism, great health, and all of that. But if you find yourself in an environment where you're always eating processed foods, you're not taking good care of yourself, you can easily find yourself on the wrong side of health, right? You can become ill, not because you were predisposed to it, but because your environment or the things you chose to eat, all those things are now giving you a different kind of disposition. So nurture, your environment is very, very, very powerful. You don't want to mess around with it. The people you engage with, the places, the things, those are the things that, to a large extent, determine your behavior and your emotional outcome. So you need to really look at that. And I try to use this picture or this thing just to show us the difference, just to let us see what nature is and what nurture is, and be able to see that environmental variables, your childhood experiences. And this is one of the reasons why we encourage families and parents. Childhood is so important. Childhood is extremely, extremely, extremely important. I love that the children that we see in therapy today, they tell us, when they begin to tell us how, they have this anxiety or depression or all these things going on around them, we begin to ask questions about their early onset experiences. They take us down memory lane. A lot of them will tell us about, the violence they were exposed at home, the neglect, not feeling loved enough. And so they internalize all these feelings, and they're now acting out depression. They're now acting out in school. Some of them are being told they're bipolar, which really they are not really bipolar. They're just angry. There's a lot of resentment. They're acting out. But we're now going to label them and give them medication without actually addressing the root cause. So we have a lot more children now cutting themselves, wanting to commit suicide, all those things, because emotionally they've not been grounded in the environment that they consistently engage with. So the nurture, they've not had that consistent nurturing that is very important to them, especially in our time. And so when we talk about nurture, I like to link it back to children. I like to link it to parenting, and the fact that our home environment are one of those core places where we need to nurture ourselves, nurture our children, nurture everyone that we come into contact with. And if we feel that there's a lot of toxicity in that important environment, we do want to do something about it, to address it, so we are not passing on a generation of like I say, tension, or generation of depression or anxiety, but we are passing on wellness, because we understand the link between being well and being able to attain your goals in a more positive life. So it's very, very important that we really don't trivialize these things, and we pay a lot of attention to it. So nature versus nurture, like I said, every one of us is a component of these two things, and you get to decide which way you want to lean. You want to lean positively, then you want to engage more in positive environments. You want to lean negatively, then you lean into negative environments. And the kind of relationships we find ourselves in, right, whether our spouses, our friends, even our workspaces, all these things are so, so crucial for us. So the question again is, why is this reflection important? Why is it important? Because I can tell you frankly, one of the things I do also is therapy, right? In all the busy things I do, I enjoy therapy. Why is this important? Because I find that more and more we are all losing our minds, literally. We are a lot more on edge these days, generally speaking. We are a lot more stressed, generally speaking, right? Because not apart from the fact that the world is being fast paced, it appears that there's a lot more responsibility on us. It appears that for a younger generation, social media is a huge thing. It appears that we have to do a lot more within a short time. And so there's a lot of things going on. We are worried about the economy, about the war. We've come through COVID or still going through it. People are worried about, what's going to happen to their future. You're hearing different kinds of news. There's war around us. All these things contribute to that. But above all, it appears as though people are not as patient as they used to be maybe 15, 20 years ago. Everyone appears to be on edge, which is why we need to take a step back to say, hey, what do I need to do to be in a good space? We see an increase in shootings in schools, right? And we used to think, oh, just high schools, but no. Now we see that in elementary school settings. We see lots of addictions among elementary age children, people that should not even have access to certain kinds of things like, any kind of drug or marijuana or even alcohol, and they are already addicted to these things in their teen years. And you're wondering what is going on? And they will tell you they need that to cope because they feel stressed. And I always ask the question, what are you stressed about? The pressure, the seen pressure, the unseen pressure, the weight, the expectations, right? And sometimes for our children who are first generation Americans, the expectations we have of them is too heavy for them to bear, and they're crushing under that. But if we take the time to really process things and try to engage people, make it, having a nurturing environment, making it one of our goals, nurturing for ourselves, for our children, for our families, then we all can relax a little bit and we can have a better human experience. I tried to look up different kinds of studies that have been done, and I tried to pick up one that was a lot more simpler and it focused on stress. And this was a study done in 2022. And you can see the details, the number of adults that were asked certain questions between the ages of 18 plus. And the results are, should not be surprising to anyone. Generally speaking, we know that, from the pandemic time up to now, we've seen at least a 30% to 33% increase in depression and stress. Younger children are the ones hit hardest the most. Adults are not spared either, but when children are younger, they don't necessarily have all the coping skills to deal with it, so they're hit worse. But we can see that the stats are not looking so great, right? And so we cannot pretend that everything is okay. We are wealthier, it shows. We are more technologically advanced. Yes, we have data on that. But when it comes to wellness, our wellness is declining, whereas technologically wise, we are getting better and better. And if you look at that, that is not a very comfortable combination. Because if you have someone who is who's great on technology, but doesn't have the human capacity or the wellness to be able to handle technology, what you're looking at is a disaster down the road. Because then technology that is supposed to help people, we can then use it to harm people, right? Because we have the power, we don't have the human emotion or the conscience to control us, to tell us when to stop, what is ethical, what is not. We're just going to go quickly down the wrong lane, and everyone else is going to be negatively impacted. So we do want to take the time to focus on ourselves and to really pay attention. I like to ask people what they do for self-care, and it's amazing what you hear. Well, I don't do much. I'm too busy. I don't have time for self-care. I have to wait until the end of the year, the middle of the year to go on vacation. Well, it's great to plan a vacation. But the question is, on a weekly basis, even on a daily basis, what are we doing to ensure that we are not abandoning ourselves? Because at the end of the day, you still have to function. You still have to be in a good space to be able to function and to engage and to get things done and to be human and to be healthy. And the doctors on this platform would agree that sometimes, when people are overly stressed for a long time, that stress leads into different kinds of illnesses and sicknesses, right? Prolonged stress can also lead to a lot of other things which you don't want. So it's important on many levels to actually reflect and to reset and to identify the things that we are not doing so great. And we can tell the things that we can begin to do to be able to make these adjustments for us because we're not looking too well. So what dimensions we are pay attention to? Your physical dimension. Those are easy to do. Some of us already diet well, which is great. Some not so much. But you know your body type. You know when you're functioning well. You know what a perfect weight is for you. You know what a healthy weight looks like for you when you're feeling good. You already know that. So do take time to reset and to reflect. And as we get older, sometimes we also have to adjust what we think about how we eat, when we eat, the things we do, when we sleep, all those things, we need to adjust them as you get older as well. And then look at your spiritual life, your quest for a higher meaning to life or to engage in a certain kind of faith. I mean, this is important to a lot of people. Again, you want to engage well, you want to engage meaningfully. You want to be able to say whatever you believe is because you understand why you believe in it, not because it was imposed upon you. And then emotionally, mentally, I like to look at your emotional wellness in terms of the bank, right? When you have deposits and you make withdrawals. We know that, as long as you have an account, at some point you make a withdrawal. But what becomes problematic is when you are constantly making withdrawals from your bank and you're not making any deposits. No matter how much money you have in an account, if you're constantly withdrawing and never depositing, at some point, it's just a matter of time, you're going to run out of funds and you're going to hit what we call NSF and you'll be charged for not having funds. You're trying to make a payment, payments will be declined. It's because you were constantly withdrawing and not making deposits. Emotionally, it's the same way. If you find yourself, you're constantly giving of your time, exerting your energy, everything you have, you're constantly giving, but you're not making time to refresh or to rejuvenate or to remold or to meditate and to give yourself back some positive energy, you will run out. It's just a matter of time. We've seen people collapse. We've seen people die prematurely. We've seen people get sick. We've seen people get into panic attack because they did a lot of withdrawals or they allowed a lot of withdrawals to be made on their behalf and they never took the time to deposit. So how do we deposit emotionally? Taking time for yourself, resting enough, doing things that give you joy, that give you life, being intentional about your relationships. If all the friends around you are giving you pressure, right? And you think about your friends and you're scared. You think about going home, you're frightened. Now that's a withdrawal. That's not a deposit, right? If you're engaging with someone on the phone and every time you speak with them at the end of the phone call, you feel really bad, you feel anxious, that is a withdrawal. But you need to be intentional so you can recognize, the people in my life, how many of them are withdrawals, how many are deposits. If your withdrawals exceed your deposits, then you know that you're in crisis. You need to look at that, your interaction, and decide, what do I need to adjust? How do I limit my interaction to people that are constant withdrawals? What do I need to do differently so that I am having some form of deposit so I can stay sane and I can stay well so I can have a better human experience? Because this is really, really important for your overall wellness and for your overall psychological development. This is very, very key for us to recognize deposits, withdrawals, and to make sure that our withdrawals do not exceed our deposits, right? We don't want that in a financial world, right? We don't want that. We shouldn't want that emotionally as well. So we need to pay attention to these dimensions. Another thing we need to pay attention to is our mindset, how we respond to people. They tell us that there are three different kinds of mindsets in behavioral science, right? There's a reasonable mind, and we all have that. There's a reasonable mind that is very logic, it's about numbers, about facts, and all of that. You're just focusing on what needs to be done, numbers, time. That's straightforward discussions. And then there's the emotional mind where strictly emotion. Someone says something, you're overly excited or you're overly upset, and you're responding 100% based on your emotions. Well, there is a space for the emotions, right? If I come and tell you that I lost someone that is so dear to me, and you start laughing, that would be a wrong kind of emotional display. I expect maybe there'll be some remorse, not necessarily tears, but something to say, oh, my condolences, something like that. you're using your emotions, that is appropriate, right? When it comes to reasonable mind, you're driving, you're observing the speed limit, or you're crunching numbers, or you're doing, figures, assessment, trying to balance accounts, looking at facts. That's a reasonable mind. That is perfect. There's a space for that. But when it comes to human interaction, human engagement on the social level, outside of work and all of that, the best place to be, the optimal place to be is what we call in the wise mind. So maybe you get home and your kid says something to you and you're not really happy about it. But because you understand the impact of your words, right? And you also understand that emotionally, maybe you're upset, you have the right to be upset. No one is saying don't be upset. But the wise mind is saying there is a way to be upset and still take a pause and say what you have to say in a reasonable way and still hold your emotions. For example, you can say, I'm really upset right now. And we cannot talk about this now, but I'll talk about it tomorrow or something like that, right? So you're acknowledging that you're upset, but you're not letting your emotions get the better part of you. This is the area called the wise mind. And if we can practice a lot more of being in that space of the wise mind, we can see immediately how our relationships can get better, whether it's at work, is at home, wherever we find ourselves. You are in control, right, of your emotions to a large extent. You can still experience them, but it doesn't mean that because you've experienced it, everyone else has to experience it. You're upset, you can still be upset, but you can manage being upset. And that space for doing that is called the wise mind, where you operate in that sphere. Another way of communication, and this does not come out too clear, I was trying to find something to show also how we communicate. A lot of the times we are communicating either passively, you're not bold enough to say what you really want to say, or you're on the extreme right, you're being aggressive, you're being too forward, or maybe rude or very judgmental, right? So those are the extreme forms of communication. The place where you want to be is called the assertive way of communicating, where someone can ask you for something and can say, I can get it done by tomorrow. Today will not be possible. I'll do my best. Today will not be possible, but I know that by tomorrow I can get it done if I have such and such and such. You are communicating assertively. To be assertive doesn't mean to be aggressive. Those are two separate words, right? Assertive is you are firm, you're confident, you're being truthful, and you're communicating in a very confident way. You're maintaining eye contact, you're being firm, you're being considerate, but you're being truthful, right? Better than saying, well, I will get it done, I will try to get it done, I'll see if I can get it done, right? No, if you're assertive, I know I can get it done by 5 p.m., or I know I can get it done by tomorrow. And being assertive also sometimes is saying, I don't think I can do this. This is beyond my skill, but I can find someone who can do it. And it's okay to do that, to communicate that in a very positive light. So between using your wise mind and being assertive, you can find that you're getting yourself to a better place. And if you reflect on this, you can see how immediately just practicing a wise mind and being assertive, that can minimize a lot of the conflicts that we experience. Sometimes we experience conflicts because we don't know how to communicate, or we let our emotions go ahead of us when you should be applying our wise mind. So you really want to think about that. And then also ask yourself, do you have a lot of things going on? I mean, I am one of those people sometimes, I take on a lot more than I should take on. I used to be that kind of person, and I had to realize that no, I need to declutter, right? You know how we declutter with our closets. I think maybe women more than men trying to declutter because we tend to have too many clothes, too many shoes, so much so that it's all over the place. And sometimes we don't even know what we have because there's too much in the closet, more than we need. But then when we declutter, we can see better. We can see clearly. You can realize, well, I already have 10 red shoes. Do I need to buy an 11th one, right? Or I already have this. I didn't even know I had this. I went out and I bought the same thing. And it's because there's so much clutter, you couldn't really see what was going on. But when you declutter, surprisingly, you have more because you can see better. Same thing with the minds, right? It's important to declutter so that you can be mindful of things around you. There's a difference between your mind being full of things versus you actually being mindful, because you've decluttered mentally, you can see better, you can experience life differently, and there's a whole lot more peace. right? So you want to pause, reflect, shift things that need to be shifted, let go of things that you need to let go, and focus on what is important. So you have the energy to engage on those things that are really, really important. And take time to sharpen your soul. Take time to sharpen your knowledge, your skills that are relevant to you, right? I was reading this book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits in there, which is the last habit, habit 7, he says, is sharpen your soul. You know, be intentional about learning things, going places, expanding your mind. Never get to a place where you feel like I know it all, I have it all. But be willing to learn and to be open-minded, right? And you can do that. So in wrapping up, I'll say be intentional about staying well, reflect, reset. No one is going to do it for you. And I like to end with a very simple example that is relevant to me. And that is also linked to my third book. You know, I grew up in Ghana being left-handed. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they tell us in the Ghanaian culture, and will I say African culture, that when you're left-handed, there's a problem with it. Now, I want someone to tell me exactly the scientific reason behind why being left-handed is a problem. We cannot find it. It was just some kind of knowledge or belief that we had. If you're left-handed, then there's a problem. You're being rude. You can't shake people with that. You can do that. I asked the question, how about people that don't have arms? And who says that my right arm is a better arm than my left arm? Who makes that determination? That kind of knowledge that we have carried and believed without asking why. You know, these are things that we will ask why. We don't know why, but we want to pass it on to our children. And I had to bear the brunt of it because I was left-handed. I didn't choose to be left-handed. I eat with my left, I do whatever with my left, and I got insults upon insults upon insults. I had to come to the US to feel at home. And that's a tragedy. Why do you have to go to a different country to feel at home when you can't feel at home among your people? And the reason they give you for that is no justifiable reason. So we really need to reflect on these things, on things that we hold true. Why is it true to you? Have you done your research? Is that why you believe what you're believing, or is it because it's been told to you? A friend of mine was telling me about how 2 years ago they had to send, they had 2 children, one was left-handed, one was right-handed. They had to send them home in the height of the pandemic, so that people could take care of them. By the time the kids came back, the left-handed person had been switched to right-handed. The mom said, why? Well, they told me that I cannot be left-handed in Ghana. I have to switch. So they had to train me to become right-handed. That's pathetic. This is 2021. Do we understand the implications of forcing a left-handed person to become right-handed? Are we aware? Do we understand that, right? So you really need to reflect on these things. Do you even know the impact of that person emotionally? Do you understand that, right? The comments we make about our children, the words we say, the things we want them to do. Do we understand why? Are we being considerate, right? Because these are really critical times for ourselves and for our children. We got to be kinder. We got to be knowledgeable. Our children will ask questions. We too must ask questions. We must believe things because they are true and not because they were told to us. And so in this 2024, as we are setting these financial goals, may one of our goals be that we are going to really reflect and reset in areas where we need to reset. We're going to take time to evaluate our relationships and our emotions, and to make sure that we're getting a lot more deposits and fewer withdrawals. We're going to take the advice they give us whenever we board a flight. They tell you if there's any change or dip in the oxygen level in the plane, they tell you, put on your mask first and then turn around and help someone. They don't tell you put it even on your child first. Put it on you first, because they know that when you are stable, you can help someone in a stable way. Because you're already stable, you can turn around and pass that on. That's why they tell you put your mask on first, so you are grounded. You can think better, and you can really be an asset and not a liability. So we want to be assets wherever we go. We want to be able to engage positively, and so it's important that we reflect, we reset, so we can have a better outcome. And the last slide would be the books that I have on Amazon. I encourage you to go on and get them. They're good books for your children and even for yourself, which is the third book I wrote. A lot of reflections from my Ghanaian experience, African experience, coming to the US, the implications of that working with children, real life situations, I'm very honest and very open, and I use not just my experience, but the scientific knowledge and what I've learned also from being here. And I want to thank you for listening and thank you for having me. So I'm going to hand over to you, Dr. O, and thank you again. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so, so much. Appreciate you. Thank you. What you posted up there, it's really for you. We appreciate you. So if you please put that down so that I'll be able to the slides. So we can now engage with everyone. So reflections and resets together. An impressive and imperative rather, for improved wellness is what you just taught us. It's also a synergy, isn't it, for improved wellness. When I was discussing this with Dr. Ajagbe, he brought these things up, last night. So thank you so very much. We appreciate you. If we don't reflect, we cannot reset. And we all have things in us that we need to reset. We all come with some kind of baggage and all of that, whether we want to admit it or not. Thank you for opening our eyes to see that we need to actually look into ourselves. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand or put it in the chat box. I put up there that, Dr. Luguterah is a blogger, an avid blogger. And if you look in the chat box, I will repost. I think, what do you call it? Blog is logosdeck.com. So please look out for her and follow her. So can you please have the names of the books again? Can you put them in the chat box for me? I got my copy of the newest book. It's geared towards us, Someone Like Me. And it's only $14 something, $14 and change. I don't know if you can see it well. Someone Like Me. I'm trying. My background is out. Yeah, I think that looks better. I got mine on Amazon. So any questions or comments for Dr. Luguterah? In the chat box, people they actually started commenting. My big brother, Dr. Doherty, Mr. Taye Doherty said, nice presentation, Dr. Luguterah. iPhone Ola said, nice presentation, very apt, thank you. Your lecture is quite inspiring and captivating, lovely. And Sister Kamsin said, thanks, Dr. Luguterah, for the great presentation. Good job, Dr. Luguterah. That's Auntie Tower. Thank you. And okay, the books are Thankful Christmas, The Red Horse, and Someone Like Me, the newest book. So Dr. Who raised their hand first? Miss Darlene Kane, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for such an awesome presentation. And I was saying that you were speaking truth to power because, as you said, like people that are impacted, it starts at home. No one wants to admit what's going on to the household. So they always want to make like the situation happen at school or somewhere else where the stress started, but the stress started somewhere like at home. But I'm just thankful for that because I teach my grandkids a lot about health and wellness because 19 and 22, they tell me all types of stuff that's going on. Like, we got to smoke our weed to stay calm, or our friends, they tell me the truth about everything. And I'm so happy. But now, yesterday, I'm proud of my granddaughter. She turned 19. She said, I want to have a sober birthday. She said, I wanted to go somewhere and rest and sleep from, being in school all day, doing hair. And she said, she just wanted to see everything naturally. And I felt so good that she could tell me that because at 19, a lot of them can't tell people stuff like that. Just tell you the truth of how they feel. And I told her I was proud of her. I said, stay focused, don't let nobody influence you and tell you nothing different. It's your birthday. If you don't want to smoke or drink or do anything that you know you don't want to do, don't do it. I said, just take your own power and be in control of yourself. So thank you for that, because I'm listening to you, because all these notes and things you're saying, I will incorporate with my grandchildren and talk to them about everything that you said. And because it was so important and it was so necessary for you to say everything. You're so important on each and everything that you talked about. So I really appreciate you tonight, everything that you said. I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge, and you just broke it down in simple English. Like, you didn't do it all like as a professor or something. Like, you're just telling the truth of what everybody's going through every day. Thank you so much.
You. Thank you so much. And, for your grandchildren, if you tell them to go to YouTube, or you go to YouTube and just search for Medical Mondays with Dr. O, you will see this particular episode. It'll be the newest one. It's streaming live right now. So it's on YouTube that they can actually listen, watch it themselves. Medical Mondays with Dr. O. There are many Medical Mondays, so you have to do Medical Mondays with Dr. O, and you'll be able to.
I'm going to do that.
Yes. And thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and thanks for your comment. And I pray that your grandchildren will continue in that path that the 19-year-old had started. She had reflected, and she's resetting as we learned tonight. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. Thank you. Dr. Jagwesa. Madam VP has her hand raised. I'm going to call on her first. Dr. Jagwe, I'm sorry. I'm doing Ojoro, but I am. Madam VP,
no, you're not doing Ojoro. I had my hand raised. Dr. Jagwe, he saw my hand, then he started to talk.
Was that what it was?
That's what happened. That's what happened. My version of it. Nice length, Dr. O. I'm loving this one.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, Dr. Luguterah,
that's resetting.
Resetting. Yeah, my takeaway, awesome presentation without a doubt, but my takeaway is us taking time for ourselves. I love the analogy of deposit and withdrawal. And we have the tendency to give too much of ourselves without, getting things, of course, you're going to deplete. So for us to stay well mentally, physically, and otherwise, we've got to balance things out. So thank you so much. You're speaking to me. Thank you very much. We need a little bit of R&R. It may not be new, but it's also important to hear somebody say it. There are probably things that we know, but it's important for you to have somebody say it. So God bless you. Thanks, Dr. O, for having her on this platform. This is New Year, so we need this.
We need to start right. Thank you, ma. Dr. Jagwe, now your turn, sir.
Dr. Luguterah, that was wonderful. I was listening to you and I was like, oh my gosh, look at the way things are flowing. It was very engaging, no doubt about that. And the first thing that came to my mind is, I would love to see your first sketch of yourself when you looked in the mirror. and I would like to see it when you finally said it started looking like you. The self-portrait is one of the best ways of reflecting. Most of the times we can see the specks in other people's eyes and forget the logs in our own eyes. And so we keep on looking at other people and saying, if I'm better than the other person, then of course I'm doing okay, regardless of how badly life could be for that individual. So that was a very important segue, for us into learning about self-care. When you do self-care, it's not just by looking good in the mirror, it's just about you knowing everything good about yourself. Because if you don't feel good about yourself, you can't feel good about other people. There is no way. You can only give out of the treasures of what you have. It says, out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks. If you have hatred in your heart and you are constantly judgmental in your heart, you cannot see anybody and say anything good about them. Unless you are manipulative, you want to have your way, and you're going to manipulate them in order to get something that they have. So I was listening to you, and I was saying that a lot of people, yes, would not take time for themselves. And so it's always going to be very rash. They don't sleep well at night. Every other thing will come into that situation because they are not rested. These are the same kind of people that will be engaging in road rage. They start everything late and they are rushing, and they're the ones that will always be very irritated when other people don't do things the way they think they should do it. So reflection is very, very important. And like Dr. O was saying, we were, kind of rummaging or reflecting on the topics. And I said, well, the two together means they must work synergistically. You cannot just reflect and not reset. And you cannot reset without reflecting. And so that's why the word synergy came into the picture, that, well, it's an imperative, it's also an imperative. They have to work together. If you don't use them together, you will just be like a mechanical situation that doesn't, give an improved outcome. So thank you so much for what you've shared. And I like that picture. I will like to have it. The picture that was showing the person with mindful on one side and being mindful on the other side. And that is a very important picture. I would like to have that and probably, use it on my, as a screen saver or something like that, because it's important that we will notice that. Because when we have our minds full, we can hardly notice what is going on around us. So when people ask me, how you doing? Okay, I don't give a cookie cutter, response to people's greetings, because I take time to reflect on what is going on right now. So I tell them, yes, I'm savoring the moment right now. I'm enjoying this moment as a gift from my Father. If you don't know who my Father is, that's fine. I don't need to explain that to you, but at least I know I am enjoying this moment and I'm savoring it with thanksgiving in my heart. So, and I think there's no way anybody can irritate me and I will lash out at them. I may be quiet and leave it for another day, but you will never see me lashing out at somebody because they have irritated me. So, and it's all coming from within. Without me having that kind of peaceful mindset, I will always be ready to fight everyone who is disagreeable with me. So thank you so much for bringing everything to limelight.
Thank you, Dr. Jagwe.
You're welcome.
Oh, our Papa is on. Mr. Okusonya, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. O.
Thank you.
Great job, Doc. Very, very, how would I put it? I'm trying to find something else to use, as everybody else have used it, that the presentation was phenomenal. I think that's what I would use at this point. Very impressive. Yes, I definitely want to share or echo the sentiments expressed by everybody else. Learn a lot. I do have one quick question, and that question is trying to how you're able to differentiate between bipolar and somebody being mad and acting out. Is there a scientific way of having to come to that type of determination? Thank you.
So this is for me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll assist you if need be. Go ahead.
Okay. So as a therapist, one of the guidelines we use is called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So we look at that, and it has guidelines for assessing someone as being bipolar, right? One of the things they talk about someone being bipolar is extreme mood swing, like really, you can be very cheerful this minute, and the next second, extremely, polar, like being like polar opposite of who you are, bipolar. So like having almost like a split personality, right? Can be very upset, very, let's say, tantrums, being uncontrollable, all those high tendencies or dangerous behaviors, like in a switch, almost like a switch, right? Bipolar. But we tend to use that normally if someone is bipolar, there is some kind of maybe factor leading to it, right? It's not just one time in the person's life and then automatically they're bipolar for the rest of their life. There's a tendency that that would occur more than once, right? But what we see in therapy is someone is maybe has a really bad day, a temper tantrum, right? So example of a kid whose mom asked him to leave the home, they're having issues, mom asked him to leave the home. He got really, really upset, and then he destroyed certain things in the home, and he was labeled as bipolar. And that was the one time that he did that. No record of prior incidents or anything after, just that one time, and that was it. And it was because it was related to something. But he was immediately classified as bipolar, depressed, anxiety, all those labels slapped on the person. But if we go back and assess the dynamic of the relationship at home, then I found out as a therapist that there's a lot of chaos going on, has been going on at home for a long time. And the guy had reasons to be really, really resentful and upset because there's a lot of trouble going on at home. So with therapy, we get to see that side and not just the fact that the person acted out. And you can link that to see if this person is really bipolar or just having a really, really rough time and they overreacted, right? So as a therapist, that's how I'm able to make that distinction or draw the line. But Dr. O, maybe you can add more to it from your perspective.
Thank you so much. I so much respect therapists and counselors. What we do, though, on the other side, speaking on behalf of my psychiatrist colleagues, is, actually come up with that diagnosis. Bipolar disorder is actually a combination disorder. That means the person have manic episodes, and sometimes they would have depressive episodes. So what are manic episodes? The mania, crazy is what we call mania. So they when they are manic, they don't necessarily, act out, they may spend money that they don't have. They may become promiscuous. There may be somebody who is very decent and all, but when they are manic, they just sleep with anyone, have sex with anyone. They may stay up for days walking and all that, and they won't be tired. They'll be going on day after day, not sleeping, and they'll just continue working and not be tired. They're in their manic state at that time. So it's not all acting up and stuff. And then there are periods where they become depressed, the same person. What is depression? It's a constellation of things. Sad mood, what we call anhedonia, that is, they don't feel like getting up to do things that they enjoy doing, guilt feelings, insomnia, not sleeping well or even sleeping too much, not eating well or eating too much, weight gain or weight loss. Those ones can go either way, but they would have, poor memory, poor concentration at that time. They may even be suicidal. And they don't have to have all of these things. That's the constellation of depression. They don't have to have all of these things. We know the number of things they have to have that we would say, okay, this person is depressed. So those moods will fluctuate. So bipolar disorder also has a spectrum. Some will stay in the depressive mood for a long time until something breaks them out, medication, therapy, or what have you, or combination. Some will stay in the manic state for a long time. Some are frequent cyclers that, they flip back and forth really quickly. And so there's a spectrum to bipolar disorder. It's different, sir, from psychosis that you're talking about. Somebody who is psychotic, somebody who is, that's another total different diagnosis. Psychosis, they don't have touch with reality. There are lots of doctors that are bipolar, that have bipolar disorder. They still functioning, and they fluctuate, they function. Professionals that have bipolar disorder, but you will not see a psychotic person that will still be functional. You can see them on the streets, they are naked. They walk naked, they go into trash cans and stuff like that. They're not themselves anymore. They've lost their mind for whatever reason until intervention is had. So that's the difference in
Thank you very much, ladies.
our standpoint. But then the therapists are the one that do the biggest job. Like she said, I give it to them. We don't have it in us to do what they do. We just prescribe medications and then, hand them over so that we can have synergy in treatment to achieve a great goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the aspect of violence is one of the areas that many people seems to worry about bipolar individuals, because when they switch to that aspect of manic phase and they become very violent, they can be totally destructive.
Actually, like I said, in the manic phase, usually what we see mostly is that they may spend money they don't have, overspend their credit card or something, sleep with anyone, which is not their norm. They just would have reckless sex, stay up for days and, just keep going. They can't sleep. They just, wired up. So that's mania. They're manic at that point. Thank you so much, sir. Was your question answered, sir?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Auntie Tower, you have your hand raised, sir. Then Dr. Aluya will go next.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Luguterah, good job. You did a good job. I mean, I'm so happy. I enjoyed it. I have two questions. The first one is about the left hand. When I left my kids with my parents and came here, my big girl, they told me, oh, she's using left hand. She can't use left hand. She can't do this. So I said, leave her alone. She will be okay. But by the time I went to pick the girls up, they've changed her to right hand. Now she's ambidextrous. She uses both hands. That's what she does. What can you do? What can you tell them to? I told them, don't change it, because is there anything we can do so they wouldn't do this to our kids?
Oh, okay. That's okay. So you want me to answer the first question and then you ask the second one?
Yes.
Okay. So I think a lot of it has to do with education. So what I have done, and actually, I use the example of myself being left-handed. And in my case, I was left-handed because I had what we call or Erb's palsy. Is a lot better now, but something happened when I was being born. I was pulled out the wrong way by the attending nurse at that time. And so by default, I had to rely heavily on my left hand to do a lot of things. My parents were okay with me being left-handed, but everywhere else outside of home, it was not okay. And when I was younger, there was nothing I could do about it but to take the insults from everywhere I went. So I carried that feeling less than, right? Because trying to live your life, you are insulted just trying to be you, just trying to eat, just trying to do whatever. So that was my reality for so long until I came here. For me, what has helped is going back to educate, because I like to ask questions, critical questions. Why do you say using your left? I want to understand why. And a lot of the times, people don't even know why they're saying that using your left hand is true. They cannot really justify that position. But I have to, ask those questions so people can rethink. And a lot of people have had to realize that, wow, we were just on the wrong side. People have gone back to read and to be able to change their, excuse me, their perspective. And this is just one. But with a lot of education awareness, sometimes we take on things and we pass it on without understanding what we're doing. And we don't look behind to see what it does to the person's self-esteem, right? Imagine someone telling you, you trying to speak the way you speak, and them telling, no, you have to change the way you speak. And what that does or can do to your psyche, to your self-esteem, to your emotions, how you carry yourself. But if we let people understand that respect is more than just your left hand or your right hand. Respect is your attitude, your character. Those are the things that matter, right? You're raising them, you're raising people for life, not just for one culture, because it's a global world. You're engaging. So we need to tell people the whole story of what it really means, how to carry yourself, and why we don't need to put pressure on people if they're left-handed. They tell us that when someone's left-handed, they use a certain part of the brain. Well, the psychiatrists would know better than I would. But you don't want to mess up someone's psyche or someone's way of living if, in fact, they're not committing any offense. A lot of it is education and telling people. And, I had to challenge someone the other day because I was in church here in the US. And I went to, put a prayer request or offer whatever using my left hand. And this person told me that I should go back and take out that money and use my right hand because it's disrespect to God, it's dishonor to God. Well, I had to challenge that because it's not true. There's nothing biblical about it. So maybe find me a different reason. But biblically, you cannot justify that statement you're making. So the more we educate and the more we use our wise mind to challenge people, that's when we can begin to make a difference, one person at a time. But I think it's important to make it. We've made a difference when it came to female genital mutilation. We had to speak a lot about it, fight for it, and people are beginning to change their mindset. Same thing with left-handed, same thing with other things that we know is not accurate. And some parts of our culture that are not pretty, we are the ones to confront it so we can conquer. You cannot conquer anything that you don't confront. So we want to confront it with the right kind of knowledge so that we can actually make a change for not just for ourselves, but for the next generation as well. So I think education is important, I would say.
Thank you very much. The second part of my question is there are some people, how can you help them? They speak fluently, they say something that makes sense, you think they are next to God, they say everything like, oh, yeah, and they act opposite. Everything they do is opposite of what they are saying. How do you help this kind of people? They are psycho. That is what I can label them. So how do you help them?
I don't know. You will need, or I will need, one will need a lot more information on this particular person to know exactly what the issue could be. Sometimes people are just in denial. Sometimes people know the right things to say, but they're not willing to put in the work for it, right? So I might set up a goal this year, I want to make X amount of money, but I'm not willing to work towards it. I will say all the talk there is, but not willing to put in the work. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have a mental health disorder or anything like that. It could just be that I'm being lazy or I'm not really motivated. I don't mean what I'm saying. I'm just trying to please people. So you will need a lot more information to be able to make a real diagnosis, if any, to see how best to support this person. It's case by case. But I know that generally also people might really want to do something, but they don't know how, or they don't feel motivated enough and they need someone to motivate them. Or sometimes they're not just being true. They know they can do it, but they're just talking the talk because everyone else around them is saying that. So it's a lot of things. It could be so many different things about that person, but I don't have enough information to make a concrete assessment of that person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Aluya, our own national president at NAPAC. Kindly unmute. That's my president too.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much, Dr. O, for for doing this. We can't thank you well enough. Like I always say, you're standing in the gap for us. Um, each and every one of us should take leadership and 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 roles in our individual spaces and find innovative ways to solving problems in each and every one of those spaces that we've chosen. You've chosen this, and we appreciate you, and I thank you for this immensely. And for everybody who comes on every day, every Monday to come listen to this, I must thank you all because, again, like they always say, in the African adage, if you hear good news, you listen with both ears. But you just don't listen, you carry those good news and spread the news as well. And that's why the word Ubuntu is prominent because together we can truly secure our community. And thank you for our great doctor who's on and doing such an amazing job. It's incredible to always know that amongst us, we have very brilliant minds who is thinking very super tentorial in that intellectual, platform when it comes to mental health and everything else that we talk about. Um, Mental health is so much more important to us now as a people. When I mean as people of African descent, because for some reason as generation pass on to generation, we begin to see the resilience that we previous generations don't have that. And we begin to see and face new entities of emotional and mental um, agitation and mental turmoil that otherwise we never used to know. Growing up, we never saw um, anybody who committed suicide or any of those things. Or what is depression? What is that? Nobody even talks about those things. And if they had it, they beat it out of you or whatever. And if you have ADHD, they will beat the ADHD out of you. And it's later on as we grew up, we began to realize that I had professors who had ADHD. But we didn't know that. We call them hyper-excitability, and that's what we call them. And these were professors of ours. But they were functional, brilliant professors, and they did well, taught us in medical school. Now, coming down to some of the questions that were talked or raised about earlier on, with regards to um, bipolar disorder. And unfortunately, here in the United States, the bipolar has become a misnomer, and people use it so frequently, almost like a defense, almost as an excuse for some of the behavior that they do get, or lack of behavior therein. But I've seen, and I'll give you two ways. When I was back home in Nigeria, I saw bipolar disorder. I mean, in its fulminant form, unbelievable. But before I go to talk about that bipolar issue, one of the things I want to bring up again when we talk about bipolar, especially the manic portion of it, like you said, Dr. O, there are variations of it. There's, sub minimal and hyper levels of it. And the manic expression of it, we should be careful when we see any of those. And first and foremost, do clinical assessment. Clinical assessment meaning from top to bottom. Top, the brain, measuring and making sure one, if it's old, if it's young, what are the issues that can alternatively affect the brain that can result in manic depression? One, if there's HIV, there's HIV psychosis, these things happen. Two, there's third stage of syphilis. Some people do get those things. We need to begin to differentiate all of those things from that. Another um, um, medical entities as well, from meningitis, either TB, from viral meningitis. Sometimes people act, and you'll be shocked, at the way those things are. But very common is thyroid disease, hyperthyroidism can present and manifest like that. And you think the person is manic. No, he's not manic. He'll be sweaty, he can't sleep. They will sweep the whole house from morning to night, when they wash the whole plate, everything else. And they'll be eating a lot, they'll be losing weight. So first and foremost, we must make sure that we, decify that and exclude those medical issues first before we begin to talk about mania and manic depression. And again, the mania can come on suddenly and can be sustained, but sometimes waxes and wane, and they go from serious hyper state and then to severe depression to a point where they can actually commit suicide. So those are people who need to be committed into the hospital and they need to be put on medication straight up. And there are medications that help them. Thank God for technology and everything else. These things come. Now, coming back to the mania that I saw in children, Lord have mercy. In my psychiatric rotation way back home in Nigeria, and there was this kid. He came up and said, "Oh, um, two of them actually, two or three, I see, but two of them said, oh, they were Jesus Christ, they were God, and they were very young. They were so one of them was 14, 15, and he said he was God, and the other one was 17." Um, and very intelligent, very smart guy, said a whole lot of things, was quoting Bible, and the other one quoting the Quran and all that, said they were God and all that and all that. The parents were really shocked. They were confused. Is he telling the truth or not? But then again, the psychiatrist knew what was going on, took care of them, put them on meds, and it was done. Now, ironically, one other one said he was a witch. He flew at night. He called somebody's name who said the lady gave him something to eat in his food in form of a meat. And he ate it, and how they went on coven and how they made he was describing all of those things. But the psychiatrist just like, oh, okay. But at that point in time, what all three of them, because they were so manic, and at that point, this was what, 20 something years ago now, almost 30, and they had no other options of what we have now. And they gave them electroconvulsive therapy. The first therapy, the kid who said he was a witch, all of a sudden, are you a witch? He's like, no, not anymore. I'm not. And totally all of those things stopped. And he came back right back to normal, putting on meds, and he went back home to his parents. So these things still happen, and children, especially in that level, are very malleable. Things, happen, and they show signs and symptoms that beyond reason that people may expect, and it's usually very distressing to the family, the entire family. So, thank you for bringing this up. It's incredible, and thank you. I appreciate you. God bless.
Thank you so much. And stay tuned next week. Dr. Aluya is coming on. So everybody, let's congregate again on Monday so that we can now hear him. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if this is Sister or Brother Shola. Kindly unmute. You have your hand raised. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, this is me. How you doing? I'm using Shola's phone, so.
Oh my gosh, this is my
yeah.
mom from South Carolina. And thank you for serving. I must say it was deployed, I don't know how many times. I don't know how many
times.
Too many times, that will be praying, deployed through the US Army. He led battalions. Those are the ones that actually lead in the war, been in Iraq, everywhere. And so I have to say that. Thank you so much for serving, for keeping us safe.
You're very welcome. It's something we do for survivors. So, yeah, I want to thank Dr. Luguterah. Is that her name? Luguterah?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
good. Very, very good presentation. I'm always very, very delighted when I see an African person do very coherent and very intelligent presentation that is not involved in a very high level of terminology that normal people do not understand. So I've heard a lot of those, and when I hear a professor to give a lecture like she just did, it just made me very, very happy. As an African person, she's one of those people that make white people scared of us. that we're taking over. So I'm very, very proud of it. And I will stand on that 100%. So I want to thank her for the presentation. One question I have from what she did was relations, reflection, and reset. So I'm just wondering, how does expectation fit into that? I know she mentioned a little bit about it. So how does that fit into that area of what she just said? Thank you.
Okay. Expectations. Can you please clarify the kind of expectations you're referring to?
Well, you mentioned a little bit about it earlier, like you use your left hand, and then people tell you left hand is not good, and you decided to tell them or question it. And another lady mentioned about how the parents force their kids to use the right hand, and now they're using both hands. And those things has a lot of environment influence based on what we expect from our parents, from our community, the people around us. And when you come to the United States, there are certain it's a different type of expectation. Like, I've been around the world, and I know what we do as a military person. We, number one thing we consider is expectation. What do they expect from us? And what do we expect from them? So when we talk about reflecting on yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, and when you're resetting and compared to your environment, how well do individual deal with it?
Okay. All right. Thank you. One of the things I try to use as a guideline is I like to look at principles, right? The principles behind the stories we're told, or behind the things we've been told, right? The principles are fundamental or could be fundamental, but the practices are those things that have to change. So if there was a time where, as a sign of respect, you're not supposed to use your left hand, well, the principle is respect. So how do we still respect in a modern way that makes sense? So that becomes the conversation. It's never about the fact that we should not show respect. But okay, we still want to hold on to that principle. But what does it look like? What does respect truly look like? And when I said I challenge people using my wife's mind, is because I want them to actually tell me why they're saying the things they're saying. A lot of times they don't have a reason. Well, it's just what we're told. It's just what we've come to know, accept it. But you always have to constantly, if you want to build something, you always have to find a way to make it better, and not just to accept it the way you see it. After some time, you have to remold. And I like to use the example, sometimes we like to hide under culture or even faith. But when you look at ourselves, we migrated from different parts of Africa to the US, I would say quite a number of us, and certain things we never did in Africa. But when we came here, we found out that in order to survive, we had to. For instance, the weather patterns, right? We don't really see snow in Africa, at least where I come from. But coming here, I realized that there is snow. I cannot dress like the way I dress in Ghana during winter. I have to adapt. So my expectation of dressing has to change. I still have to put on clothes, but the clothes have to be different. The clothes have to align with the weather that I find myself in. The idea has always been to be safe and to be decently dressed, but it's looking different now in winter, right? And even going back to the time of COVID, what did COVID look like? What did safety look like? It looked like mask, it looked like having a shield, and so many other things. So the purpose was not the shield, it wasn't the mask, it was safety. And so when we focus only on the practice, we lose the real essence. So when we are looking at expectations, the question always becomes, what is the reason behind it? What is the principle? And then we can decide whether that reason behind it is still applicable in our time. And maybe the principle is still right, but the practice has to change. The same way, the currency I spend in Ghana is not the currency I spend here in the US. I have to switch the currency. It's still money, but I have to use a currency that is viable in this new environment. And for us also as Africans, we have a lot of richness to our culture we need to hold on to, but there are certain parts that are no longer, will I say, helpful to us. Like those times where they say because you're female, you can only go this far in education. Well, why? What was the real reason behind it? Right? And how do we reset expectations? So it's always important to look at the principles and adjust practices without necessarily throwing away the principles. I think having that and doing a lot of education makes the difference. We've done a lot, we've achieved a lot with some of our social issues just by educating people and making people have a better understanding of things, to say, really, when people made these laws, they did not have a full understanding of how life functions or how life is today. But now that we know what we know, what can we do to maintain those principles, but to adjust the practices? So that's a good way to approach some of these expectations and to set them realistically.
Thank you. But Aremi, is your question answered?
Yeah, she did a very good job. She touched on it earlier. I just want to see how when we talk about reflection and reset, it is certain expectation that goes along with it. From my experience, when I go to where I go around the country, everywhere, there are certain expectations that people will say, okay, you from Nigeria, you're supposed to be smart. I don't know why that is. You guys are very smart people. Not only that you're smart, they kind of have a reservation about us taking over, like being, dominating the environment, which is very scary to a lot of people in power at this moment. So I'm just concerned about when we do resetting as individual, on a daily basis, on our jobs and our family, expectation goes a long way. That what do they expect from me while resetting and reflecting on myself? That's it.
Thank you so much. And I must say, you are a model for us, because after your retirement in the Army, you actually got your doctorate degree. I was there. So
yeah, you were there. Yes, thank you. It was nice.
So thank you so much for all you do and you keep doing for us as a people. Thank you. On behalf of all of us, I say thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And it was
Thank
for
you.
us. And in it, I don't know where you have the time to study all through that time, but you did. Thank you.
It wasn't easy.
Thank you. So, Dr. Okweyemi from London, kindly unmute. So if you remember, Dr. Okweyemi, he's been one of our speakers. He was in Nigeria, now in London. Kindly unmute and ask your question. There you go. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. O, for these arrangements. I would like to appreciate you once again. This kind of work is not I know it's not easy in terms of course, it requires a lot of commitment and here and there. And I want to appreciate everyone that has been participating. Particularly this evening, this particular presentation, is very amazing. I want to congratulate the speaker. Some of the things that she mentioned are some of the inherent issues that we are having in our right here before us, and it seems that we don't really have much solution, enough solution to take care of some of the issue. The one that particularly interests me is the issue of all these suicide among the youths, and is actually worrisome. And I tend to ask myself, I want to ask, because is there anything that has to do with imagination the way people see, what they imagine, how or is the role of how is imagination has to do with some of all these things. Because I'm a Christian. I understand some biblical principles about. I don't know how this is actually playing out, because I remember the Bible says that Romans chapter 8 verse 6, if you are carnally minded, the person we have is a life of death. But when somebody is spiritually minded, he has peace. So I want you to please try to unravel how does the imagination has to do with this, even among people. Somebody can just hear something and is by the time the person tend to take it off the limit, and the next thing is they are thinking of a suicide, all sort of thing. How does imagination has to do with this, please? Thank you very much once again for the presentation. I'm so very, very much impressed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. O.
Thank you. Dr. Luguterah.
Yes, okay, thank you. And yes, we talked about depression. So, suicide, sorry. And I have seen 13, 14-year-olds. In fact, one of the people I speak with has tried to do that at least on 3 different occasions. So the self-harming and all of that. And I like something that someone said about resilience. It's a combination of things, right? Especially when it comes to our children, our first generation American children, right? Who are having real crisis now. Is a combination of things. I don't think we fully understand the impact of social media yet on the minds of these young people. The pressure is real. And when you look at the stages of development in children, when it gets to, when we're using Erik Erikson's stages of development, when it gets to the preteen years, these are the years where it's called identity or conflict, right? And these are also at the time where they're trying to identity or role conflict. They're trying to emerge into their own, and the environment, which is what I talked about, nurture the things that anchor our children. How critical that is, because when there are cracks, when they are younger, those cracks widen as they get older. So they're not feeling they have like a base, a solid base at home. As they get older, you're going to see the cracks in terms of where they go to fulfill that longing, because it is a genuine longing in everyone that needs to be fulfilled. And if it cannot be fulfilled at the right places, wherever they need to go to find it is where they will go. No matter how much you pray, they have to have a place to go to. And if it's not home, then it can be anywhere else. For a lot of people, that is social media. Why? Because when they were younger, it was not regulated. They had phones quicker than they needed to. They were exposed to a lot of information more than their mind could process. They have a lot of spare time because we parents, we are busy working, building our homes in Africa or doing a lot of things. We're not really hands-on. We're not really home. We're trying to hustle to take care of this, to pay that, to do that. So there is a lot of things, of factors. And as these children get used to not being surrounded by strong people or not having a strong social support, the social media quickly replaces them, which is why when there's a challenge on suicide, they jump into it and actually commit suicide, because there's a challenge on TikTok about let's see if you can commit suicide, and people actually do it because that is what is raising them. That is what has captured their mindset, and that is where they are. We talk about resilience. I grew up, not having water. Sometimes you have to carry a bucket of water on your head, walk miles, you have to cook, you have to do that. All of those things, although unpleasant, in a certain way, you build some level of resilience. But if I ask us now, what are we doing proactively to help our children build some level of resilience in them? A lot of people would not know how to answer this question. But we have these young children who have to face life, because life is not kind no matter what. So if they don't have the skill to be resilient, Then when they're filled with a crisis, when they're faced with a crisis, when someone tells them you're not pretty enough, everything becomes a crisis because they've not had to deal with any kind of rejection or anything like that. So there is no buffer. There's nothing to anchor themselves on. And also for those who don't believe in any kind of faith or anything like that, then you're really wide open. It can easily be blown whichever way. So social media is a real force. Some people don't believe that, but it's a real force. It could be a negative force very quickly, especially for young children. And so that is shaping their mind, the minds of people. Oh, I have to post, I have to look a certain way, I have to do that. The pressure from it. And they've not built any resilience. And yet, imagine you don't know how to swim, and yet you are thrown into an ocean. You are going to drown. It will take a miracle for you not to drown. But this is the reality of a lot of our children because we are too busy. We're not there, right? When you're growing up in Africa, or mostly in Africa, you have this kind of community support. Everyone is watching you. People are disciplining you appropriately. You know that you're being watched. Everyone knows what's going on around you. There is some kind of accountability. But here, you could be home. You could be sick for 2 weeks, even be dead. Some people die for weeks before we even found out that they are dead in their own home. No one is really paying attention, right? And all these things are coming back to haunt us now, especially with our children. If we decide to have them, then we have to be available emotionally for them. Sometimes we can pay their tuition, take them to the most expensive school, and we think that that is enough. That is not even close. Be emotionally available. That is when you know really who your child is, what they need help with, services they need, what's going on with them. Just having that relationship so that you become an anchor. They have a real strong base that they can always default to and be able to have some kind of leverage. But a lot of our children don't have that because we have this typical African mindset. I'm the parent, you are the kid. It's not relationship. It can be very adversarial. And so if it's adversarial, then wherever they feel like they're being embraced is where they're going to go because they're growing and they have a need to belong and to identify themselves with anything, just something that they need to identify with. So we have to be very proactive and to find ways to help our children to be resilient, to build relationships with them where they can tell us anything, nothing is off the table, and it's a healthy relationship, then they are less likely to find themselves in those situations, or at least they will come to you to tell you that they're in crisis, and you'll be able to respond to them in a way where they can feel safe, because really, as they get older, all the cracks widen.
Wow. Oh, God help us. We have work to do.
That's
Dr.
also
Oyedepo. Thank you. Thank you.
That's you have just nailed the
Wow.
nail on the head. This inherent problem of social media is becoming clearing and clear to everybody. Thank you very much. I'm very
However,
grateful.
we need to also take home why are these children running to social media? Because the parents are not there. The relationship is not forged
Yeah,
for them
yeah.
to have them to go to. We need to change that. This is deep. This is important. These children are our future.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for that question, for you asking the question too. Thank you. Dr. Aluya, kindly.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So I will begin. I mean, again, thank you so much, Doc, for saying you unpack a whole lot of things, a whole lot, and in such a way that a lot of those things we would most likely not be to address completely. But then again, every big moment in life that eventually takes place begin with little steps, and those little steps must begin somewhere and by some people. Um, you did mention, I did mention earlier about resilience. As generation move on to generations, the resilience is lost. And we begin to see a whole lot of issues right now. And even in Nigeria as well. There was a span at one time where majority of the people who were committing suicide were doctors in Nigeria. We heard that. A big span of it. Doctors, young doctors, because of pressure and all that, were committing suicide in Nigeria. That was something we never ever saw before. And because paramount to that is the changing dynamics of everything. The changing dynamics of everything. We often talk about the changing dynamics of diseases as it affects us, increasing blood pressure, increasing diabetes, increasing kidney disease, increasing this. We also forget there's increasing mental dissociation as well. Again, epigenetics, meaning how your DNA is changed, not the structure of the DNA, but how it expresses itself. The food that we eat, the environment that we live, the social structure and all that is affecting a whole lot of all these things. But bear in mind that as you and I mean, I'm sitting here in Irvington, New Jersey, and some of you are in California or wherever you are right now. That is technology that makes it possible. We're going to learn a whole lot of things that would wonder and bewilder us completely. It will change the narrative by which you and I understand each other and how we understand the environment that we live. It would even shake the foundation of the rudimentary belief that we even have, even the God that you serve. Things are going to come and they're going to come so fast and change a whole lot of things. But we must be prepared. And that's why, often enough, sometimes when I talk about we as parents must also study. And I use this analogy. Each and every one of you here are lioness and lioness, or lions and lionesses. Because no matter how bad the drought is in the market, in the forest, the lion would never eat grass. No matter how bad the drought is in the forest, the lion will never eat, rather die of starvation. But guess what? The lion that has not been taught how to hunt, the parents should expect that lion to die of starvation or hunt rats and rabbits. And we don't want our children to hunt rats and rabbits or lizards. They're lions and lionesses, for God's sake. And we expect them to behave like that. But then guess what? You and I must do our due diligence by equipping them. But for us to equip them, we must first and foremost be equipped ourselves. Understanding the fact that, look, as we come into this country, we're first generation Americans, or immigrant Americans. We go through the rudimentary troubles of adjusting and adapting and assimilating to the environment here. And in that process, it is hard. We also go through our own emotional issues. But because we have the resilience, we're able to handle and wonder and go through the whole issues and whatever. But in the same places, a whole lot of things change. Even the belief in God that we serve. And that's why you find out that those who used to go to church 2-4-7, morning, night, evening, back home in Nigeria, when they come here, guess what? They don't go to church anymore. First, this time around, work is more important. The dollar and money, the pressure and everything else from home. So also the dynamics begin to change in their homes, in their mind. A lot of people, how many of our people here who've also gotten to the verge of contemplating suicide? It's come to their mind. Or guess what? Of hopelessness. But because they have that thing that was instilled in them right from the beginning, they're able to stand above it. And some of those things, they themselves are struggling to put their foot down, struggling to get themselves regularized with the system, meaning get their papers. And even those who get their papers, they're trying to get into their what do you call it, the structure of training. If you're a doctor, and that's why sometimes I sympathize with some of them when they come in here, or an engineer, and you have to start to become a taxi driver or security man. That itself has something to do with the mindset. It does. We have a whole lot of unfulfilled dreams among us. We live with that, and they're never the same. And that affects the dynamics of a home, where the proverbial role of a father is no longer what it is. And sometimes they come to a situation where the mother is now the breadwinner or the bigger breadwinner of the house. Do you know what that does to the psyche of the African man? A whole lot. And that's why the dynamics of raising children is essentially different as well. And we here, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this to our women. You're like, it's my child. Mother say that back home. When you say that back home, leave my child alone. It is okay. The father knows, we know who the father is here. But when the mother says that here in this country, my child, it's a different tone. And guess what? That child looks to say, you know what? I will believe what my mom is saying. And a lot of the time, and I've dealt with this, a lot of parents, and especially men, become bystanders in their homes. They become bystanders. They are no longer as involved as they should be because of a lot of things. But this is where I call that parents, we are becoming, we're becoming older, we're becoming grandparents soon. Where, and I've said this in a church, and a lot of people looked at me and they looked at me funny. And I told the grandparents who are, if you're becoming a grandparent right now, you have a duty to begin to help your children financially. I'm not saying if they need help, help them. For God's sake, please. Because you no longer are spending money for school for them or doing all of those things. You have a little bit extra. Put money aside for your grandchildren. Put money aside. You see all that money that your children are beginning to wonder, like, oh, where do I put the extra $100 for school for their children? No, it's your job right now, not theirs. Because that's what the other people are doing. They put money aside for their grandchildren as their children struggle to put their foot on the ground. They have to. Because it makes a whole lot of difference. That extra $100, $50 that those children will have to worry about putting children for their school, you will help augment that. So that by the time they come 15 and they are stable enough in their career, they can now put money. That money will go a whole lot further. You'll find out that the children a whole lot better. And your children will respect you even more. And your grandchildren will know that grandma and grandpa is helping out set my future ahead of me. Because that's what other people do. Secondly, that communal thing that we tend to have. And like the great doctor said, that back home, you see somebody who would chastise your child for you, who would hold your child in love and discipline them in love. We're losing all of that. Well, it's me and my family, I don't care. I don't want to get involved with anybody else. Listen, there's nothing as good as having that family unit. And here in the diaspora, our family unit are your great friends and those who operate in the same line with you. Church, communal service, all of those things. Those are your family now. Not necessarily the ones you call uncle. And that's why here, thank God, we still say uncle and brother and whatever. Your children are, how many uncles do I have? You understand? Because guess what? If you look at the Jewish community, one of the things they've been able to do to preserve them, you find that one or two go out to work, but two or three of the other women take care of the other children in the house or in the whole society. And that's what's happening. And that's why you find out that they fight so much to preserve what they have. You see what's happening in New York with the fights and the school system. They fight hard to preserve that because they want to preserve their sanctity. So, before I close, one of the things we must understand with our children, and we begin to know this again now, is that our children, based on the pattern, children generally, based on the pattern of the way the brain develops, there are enzymes that are formed that have not been formed yet. There's some, I'll use technical word, decarboxylation and oxidation. And that's why it's easier for a child, especially those who are teenagers or whatever, to become addicted to something. Social media, alcohol, all of those things. Because they're setting evolutional process that the brain has to go. It's like a flower, it opens up. And that opening up is a maturity process that takes place. And a lot of them don't have that. And that's why they need that emotional support. So we begin to see that decarboxylation, oxygenation, and all that. And that's why once those enzymes are formed in them, it becomes really difficult for them to become addicted. Some are much more mature than others. And that's why for you and I, it becomes so difficult for us to get addicted to anything at this age because it's unfolded. So because we understand that, we understand the dynamics of the brain of a child, we must give them emotional support. And that is what the whole family needs. And we must, once again, do the booting thing. We are and protect our home and protect our family. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much. I normally don't read the chat questions until the people who have raised their hands have asked questions or contributed. But this one is following the last question, and it is so important that I don't want us to lose the momentum there. The question to Dr. I think it was Dr. Adewole's question. What about our children at home in Nigeria with the resilience we're talking about, but are now increasingly addicted to hard drugs? When I went to Nigeria this December, it was a shock for me to see that drugs had become a problem amongst the youth. It was bad. What about that? You know, Dr. Aluya, I 100% agree with what Dr. Aluya said about, how roles change here sometimes, men are not respected like they should, and we should. Women, we must respect our men. They are the heads of the family. And, these things affect the home, yes. But what about Nigeria, where they didn't go to another country? That was where we grew up. What happened? Why are they now on heroin, cocaine, tramadol, different things? Weed, Dr. Luguterah.
Yes.
Your take.
Yes.
What's your take? It's
Yeah.
a somber thing for me.
Yes. And I'll even add to that, I think I saw a video recently and a news caption from another African country. Is it Sierra Leone or Uganda? I'm not sure. But at this time, they're going to the grave sites and they're taking bones, right? And because there's something in the bone
I saw
that makes
that.
them die.
Yes.
So they've even graduated to that level because they're always looking for the next high.
Mhm.
When someone is looking for a high, is because there's something that they're chasing after. There's a void, there's something somewhere, and you're trying to fill it with anything and everything. And when we talk about resilience, I don't want us to feel as though when you are here, you can never build it, and then when you're in Nigeria or Africa, you automatically have it. It is the experiences you're exposed to. Those are the things that allow you to build that resilience. It's not automatic. So if you're shielded or if you find yourself in the wrong hands, it doesn't matter where you are, there's going to be a downhill, right? And sad to say, even for some of us, for some of our households back in Ghana or Nigeria, if you look critically, you want to ask yourself, who is actually monitoring these children? Who is actually taking care of them? Who is understanding them? You will be surprised to see the influences around them. Some of these children are even being abused sexually and in different ways also. So there's a whole lot of things going on. Our culture is not as innocent as it should be. Why? Because for some of us, we decided to copy the culture of the West, or we incorporated certain things because we felt that those things look better than, certain aspects of our culture. And we are also too busy, or we want to be modern, quote unquote. But when we instill a good sense of discipline in our children and we monitor them, because remember, it's not just nature, it's nurture. And I said at the beginning, your environment arguably is even more powerful than what nature gives you. Because we see that for certain people who even have a negative predisposition, they're able to use resources, medication, therapy, friendships, certain things around them to greatly suppress what would have been negative tendencies. The reverse is also true, right? You could have positive things naturally, but if you're not careful, if you find yourself surrounded by wrong influences, you will go down quickly the wrong path. And children are highly impressionable. What are our children seeing around them more often? We are cursing around them. We are smoking around them. We are drinking around them. We are not modeling the right kind of behavior around them like before. So what they see is what they do. If you want to really look at the state of a nation, look at the children, because the children are a reflection of what is around them. No child enters this world with a cigarette in their mouth. They pick it up. They learn something once they arrive on planet Earth, right? In their environment, that's where they pick it up. So if we really want to assess ourselves, how we're doing, we look at our children. We change ourselves so that our children can change because they're looking at something different. But if we focus on them, we're not going to change much because we are still not modeling whatever they need. So we need to model that. We need to become those things that we want our children to become. And then we stand in a better position to be able to correct them. I'll tell you something simple. You know, some of our children don't even speak the local languages anymore. We only want them to learn English. Why? Because we think English is the most important thing. But do you know that there are certain words that you cannot even express in English. English is very limited. Once you speak a second language, you realize how limited the English language is. And you realize that your native language is very powerful, it's very rich, it's very deep. And sometimes when we speak to our children in the native language, it makes more sense than what we say to them in English. So you see how we're even not helping ourselves because we think we want to be modern, we want to be global. So like I said, there are a lot of great things in our African culture. Those are the things that we want to promote. Those things we need to change, we ought to change. But those things that are positive, we need to promote. And we need to become those things that we want our children to emulate. Our parents emulated different things for us. Our parents, maybe they did drink, but they did it differently. And even those who smoked, there was a way they went about it. There's certain things they did very differently. They were more, well, I say, intentional. They're more authoritative. Certain things have changed. But now we're a lot more casual, a lot more careless, I have to say. And our children see that. They see the fragmentation. They see the hypocrisy even, whether it's in church or outside of church. And they're drawn to certain things because those things are being magnified to them. Remember, the children are highly impressionable and they're going to pick all these things. So we ought to emulate what we want our children to become. There is no shortcut when it comes to these things. I wish there was, but there really isn't no shortcut. We have to do the work. We have to become what we want our children to become.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. That is key. There's that saying that the children will do what they see, not what we say. It is true. Sister Omotara, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Luguterah. Thank you so much. So I just want to comment on what Dr. O said before the last person and the last person spoke. You said that kids go to social media because they need relationship with their parents. That is true. And sometimes, even when they come to us, we don't want them to be kids that they are because of whatever thing we expect them to do, our own expectation. We expect them to meet our expectation without giving thought or consideration to how they feel, why they feel the way they feel. And they certainly have somebody that will listen to them on social media. So I'm agreeing with you halfway on that The second thing I'd like to comment on is what the doctor that spoke, Dr. Oh, help me out. The doctor that spoke right after you.
Dr. Aloya.
Yes.
Dr. Aloya? Okay.
I'd like to say, in as much as what he said is mostly correct, there are two sides to the coin most of the time. So we have to put that into consideration. And Doctor, the last comment, I'm just giving a blanket comment because I see Dr. Kukola's hand up. And the last thing Dr. Luguterah said about us doing what we want our kids to do. We have this saying that says, do as I say, don't do as I do. And it's a terrible thing. My kids know that when I tell them to do something, I must have tried it. And if I don't know, I ask. I don't say, I don't think anybody's wisdom is less than mine. And funny enough, my son asked me one time, very recently too, that why can't people use their left hand? I said, say you don't have a reason. I said, it's a cultural thing. He said, you guys need to move on. So a lot of things that they question me about that I really can't explain. And I'll say, you know what, thinking about it, that's how we were brought up. And he'll be like, look, you were brought up at that time. Now it is not relevant. I think you guys need to move on from that. And there are a lot of things. And as African parents, it's a difficult thing for us to do. I get that. But I think just trying to listen first, instead of assuming that I tell my kids, I'm a dictator in this house. That is the rule here. But it does not necessarily mean that I don't let them talk. I'm only a dictator when I have tried something and it worked, or when I expect them to do something and they don't want to do it. But because I have already done it, and because they know that most of the things I ask them to do, I can do myself. So I'm not asking them to do it because I can't do it. I tell them, I'm asking you to do it because I need you to know how to do it. That's number one. Number two, about the village training a kid. Even my children's white friends, when they come to the house, I speak Yoruba to them. And they'll look around like, I don't understand. So, oh, ask your friend. My kids can't speak, but they all understand. Well, 2.5 of them understand. The third one, I'm still teaching. But it's because he decided he doesn't want to understand at an early age. But he knew he didn't have a choice for whatever reason. But like what Dr. Luguterah said, a lot of the reasons the kids try to move away from the culture is because of what they see with us. And it's not fair for us to blame them for whatever, because we didn't even give them the opportunity to tell us why they feel the way they feel. We just think we are the parents. We get to make the decision. It is not that simple. And we need to come to terms with that as Africans generally. And thank you. This is a social issue that we need to continuously flog until some of us that are still able to learn and then pass it on to our kids. Because I told my son, I said, by the time you start having kids, nobody's going to be speaking the language again. And he said, that is true. I said, so you better start speaking, because I only speak Yoruba. I do not speak English. I learned my English with money. I do not speak it carelessly, period. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I would tell you, though, that to surmise what you have said, I think everybody is saying basically the same thing. Children will do what they see. I don't care what you tell them. I don't care if you're a dictator or not. Dr. Aloya just wrote there that you can be friendly with your kids, but you are not their kids. And he's right. So no matter what you do, they would do what they see. And even when they resent it, they will catch themselves later on emulating. So how we live before our children is very important. And I commend you, because whichever way you say it, even if you think you're a dictator, the fact that your children can come to you and question culture means that they have an open line of communication with you. And that's what Dr. Luguterah had said before, that, you have to create that environment where the children can come to you and not go to the world to go look for answers, or to social media to go look for answers. Social media is great, but hey, there's a lot of evil in it if they have to go there. So I compliment you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution. Dr. Popola, you have 2 minutes. Kindly unmute.
Okay. The gag order starts on me. I'll take it. Please, Dr. Luguterah, thank you so very much. I'll go quickly and use the 2 minutes expeditiously. Number one, please give those kids. We are just talking about less than 1% of our kids. Let's be factual. And we are concerned about those. Nigerian kids have shown that they are above board generally in school, in sports, and in social behavior. And recently, we gave an award to the Nigerian Nurses Association in New Jersey. And two of them came to me later and were discussing. I said, at the same time, you are the most guilty for broken homes of Nigerians in America, even though you are the ones that have brought Nigerian the honor of the most read, most educated, and most professional group of people, the Nigerian nurses. And they say, oh, it's about our husbands. They want to depend on women instead of going to find a way of life by themselves, come up to par. Okay, so number one, give the kids a lot of credit. What we are not doing right, sincerely speaking, is that important way of life that it takes a village to raise a kid. We are jettisoning it in our respective homes and families. Most of them don't belong to Nigerian organizations. We don't go to Nigerian churches. And you find that those kids that attend the church or the mosque of Nigerians tend not to be the one that go wayward. So that concept is still there. So I'm saying this because these are the fault lines. Okay? These are the fault lines. When you're going to Nigerian parties, especially our ladies, I used to tell my wife, take the children along. Okay, take them along. Let them see that other Nigerian kids and other Nigerian parents also bring their children along. So these are areas that we can make it a soft landing. Why do children want to commit suicide? Thank you, Dr. Luguterah. Sorry if I don't pronounce your name right. Most reasons is that they feel the parents are not positioned enough to help their cause. I fell for that. I used to take my son to everywhere. He played soccer all over. He did athletics and he was good in academics. But this group of kids, he went to a private school, complained that it smells like fish. Because one day he ate delicious fish from the house in the morning, and they could perceive the odor. And so to this date, my son has stopped eating fish. Sincerely speaking, I couldn't get it back. And I said, yeah, it has this vitamin, it has that, and all the other thing. But because his classmates told him, you smell like, you're smelling like fish. Just that one day, we struggled for a long time to make sure he got his esteem back. Okay? I have a family, the daughter was the best in school, but was short. And the mom decided that because she's sorry to use the word, Dr. O kind of Christian, he said she shouldn't use earring, she shouldn't do her hair, not the other thing. Okay? By the time she got to college, she stopped coming home for holidays because she didn't want to offend the parents. At the same time, she wanted to do what other people were doing. So we should find a midway where we are good. And the only way I'm looking at is, can you get into associations and relationship with your other Nigerian? A friend of mine says we are the new villagers with ourselves. whether we are Ghanaian, whether we are Kenyan, whether you are Nigerian, whether we are Igbos or Yorubas. We are the new villagers. And until we can bridge that little gap, we are going to struggle with that 1% or less than 1%. The final thing, thank you, Dr. Aluya, that I should be contributing to make sure that my grandchildren, because they are coming now, can have something. That's also a good idea about the village raising a kid. Every kid that knows that there are other people involved in their care tends to have a more liberal way of looking at life. It's when you have over restricted them, okay, or you seem to be not relevant to the way of life that is available to them, that they will draw out and seek other lives in other places. I'm not too sure that this final one I'm noting too. Our generation has been the problem of Nigeria. Okay, the disco generation. Okay, we turned out we became professionals and all the other things, but how much of those cultural values did we drop? Okay, now we don't have much to pass on to the children. And that also goes to, let's get back and get our strong Nigerian associations relevant in the lives of our children, just for the 1% that tend to go out of way. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that robust contribution. Much appreciated. I'm looking at the time and we still have some questions. Dr. Luguterah, I want to suggest that you give 1 minute maybe to each of these questions.
Okay.
There's a question, a comment here that yes, we actually reflect and reset to get a problem solved. But like the left-handed boy example you gave, how do you address the problem of truism in different cultures, which are strictly by convention and facts about nature? Truism in different cultures, which are strictly by convention and facts about nature. And before you answer, you answer that, I just want to say with the issue of the left hand, you've said it over and over. Some people have said it. How did they come by that? How did we, as African culture or African cultural people, come about people should not use left hand? It is because in the culture, it is believed that left is bad. Period. Please give it a thought. That is why. I'm ambidextrous. I have a son who is ambidextrous. And I thank God for parents who never gave me a hassle about it. So please, go ahead and answer the question.
I will. One of the theories that I heard about being left-handed was because they said when you use the washroom, when you go to the washroom, you use your left to clean yourself and not your right. So
They
your
say
left
left is bad.
it's dirty.
Yeah.
And to answer this person's question, which I think we've answered already, but in a different way, it's a matter of researching what is actually true, right? So this thing about if you're using left-handed, for example, and you go and research, what is it that makes someone's hand dirty? Like, is that the only thing that could potentially make someone's hands dirty? How about the other things we use our hands for that equally mar our left and our right hands? So that is, when you understand the reason why people say certain things, that becomes the basis for which you can research further and challenge if you have counter information. So when something is true, even when something is printed on paper, the fact that it's printed on paper doesn't make it true. And like I said, we used to have 9 planets. I mean, there are millions of books stating that there are 9 planets, but now it's 8. So the fact that something has been printed for years doesn't make it true. There's always room and reason to try to ask questions behind. And that's why when our children come to us with questions, we can't answer them because we don't know anything. And so we haven't challenged anything. But if you ask, why do they say this? And they give you a reason, you will be able to say, is that really the reason why we've been doing this all these years? This has to change, right? And I talked about female genital mutilation or women married off early. Why? Why were we doing that? Seek to understand, and based on that understand, it doesn't matter the culture you come from. I'm sure there are other cultures that have other things that may not be truthful anymore, may not be true anymore. So it's not just Africa, but we're talking about Africa because that's where most of us come from. And to challenge things, if something is printed, it doesn't mean that it's true. You still have to understand why and see even if it's relevant or applicable to our lives today. And that's how you begin to confront things and change things.
Thank you. That was, I mean, thank you. I know you've talked about it before, summarizing it. I'm glad I still read out that question because it put things into even better perspective.
Can I give a shot at that for 1 minute?
There's
For 30 seconds.
No, Dr. Pokola, hold on.
Just to respond to
Madam
that.
VP,
Sincerely speaking, left
Dr.
and right
Pokola,
hand,
Dr.
left
Pokola,
and right hand is a social
Dr.
norm.
Pokola,
Oh,
you
I thought
will
you said I
get a
should talk.
chance. Hold on, please. Hold on.
No,
Madam
just for
VP,
the answer she gave, just to write it out.
okay.
Thank you. When everybody uses the left hand for dirty things and right hand for good things, you are more comfortable to go right hand to touch one another, to shake hands. It's a social norm, and that is what is behind it. There are some of these social norms that is simply because of a human behavior. If I know everybody uses the left hand in the bathroom, okay, even if I'm left-handed, okay, I know that it's easier for me to shake hand right to right, simply because right hand is actually with doing good things. Honestly speaking, I think that's the most important reason for that. Thank you. I yield, please.
Thank you. Madam VP?
Yes, ma'am. You know, there was also an implication of this in the Bible. So some of this might have been amplified to an extent where it became worldwide. You remember when Jacob, I mean, not Jacob, Isaac was going to bless his sons. You know, was it who was blessing the two boys? Who was the father of Isaac? The mother positioned them knowing that he was going to use the right hand, but he did not put his right hand on the son. He crossed it, and the mother was saying, "Wait a minute, this is not. That's not where your hand should go." So there are so many things that we have ascribed to being correct, and even by naming it to say right, it means that is correct thing. That's the right way. And whether it has a symbolic meaning or spiritual meaning, there are deeper things. The only thing that I believe or I want to hear from what the presenter is saying is one size does not fit all. For us to be more tolerant and accepting of who that person is, not what they do, but who they are. Whether they use left hand or they use right hand, it shouldn't matter. You know, it's just for us to look at the bigger picture of things right now. If that person is comfortable using their left hand, so let it be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doctor, real quick, from Genesis chapter 48, we're talking about Jacob blessing the twins, Manasseh and Ephraim. In the hands, as Madam Vicky just said.
Thank you. Yes.
Go for it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Exactly what the discussion of the left hand had been, that in our culture, children have been confused. Adults confused children because they born using their left hand. It wasn't their fault. But when they do that, they stigmatize them. They chastise them. And that needs to change in our culture. It's not fair. to the children. And you just buttress that, Madam VP, that we need to be tolerant. We are going beyond tolerant. We like it needs to change. Children should be allowed to use, whatever hands God has, has created them to use. Some will use left, some will use right, some will use both, like I do. I was born like that. And I have a son who is like that. So we're not aberrations. We just created different.
Yeah, and another part of the culture in terms of physical body and things like that, doctor, if you don't mind, is this in Nigeria. I don't know if it's the rest of Africa. When an adult is talking to you, you dare not be staring at them in the face. It's considered being disrespectful.
Yes.
But here in America, when they're talking to you and you're looking the other way, it means that you're lying. But that's not the case. So these are cultural values. They have their place. They have their places. Let's not completely obliterate what it is. But if it's not working for you, it's not working. When you're in Rome, you as a Roman, Americans are accepting of left-handed people. Let's move on.
This issue in Africa actually destroys some children. And that's the problem. So we need to educate our African families back home. When we have a child who is left-handed, that it's actually okay. They are not taboo. And we should protect them. That's the key. Because it actually has destroyed some children. And they don't ever achieve after that. So there are some comments here, not necessarily, I think Dr. Ajagbe, did you raise your hand? Dr. Ajagbe?
Yes.
You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, sir. 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise the issue of social media. I see a lot of problems with parents not even understanding the technology, while the children have mastered the technology. When the children master the technology, there is no way a parent can monitor or kind of help them to regulate what they know to do. So my thing is, we as parents must master the emerging technology at least as much as our children do, if not more, so that we can at least help them along the way, because we seem to be more matured in how we navigate such terrain. So that's what I'm trying to say, that when everybody wants to push the blame on social media, we have to remember the children. Anything that seems to be easy, and everywhere we're turning now is more of game. And that's a very good way. Anything that is playful is easy for children to learn by. We'll be surprised at how many children have learned to kill just by the technology that we gave to them as parents. Many of them have learned all kinds of crazy tricks and, stuffs. That's unfortunate. We're talking about culture in Africa. There's way more issues to deal with the emerging technology. And we can't avoid it because they are there. And if you don't buy them phones at home because you want to punish them, you are the dictator in your house, sure, they will go to their friends. They will use their friends' technology. They have access to stuff in school that you don't even know that they have access to. So no matter how we're dealing with this, we have issues with cultural issues. We may call them backwards if we want, but there are more emerging stuff that we must deal with if we want to really see, we want to see excellent outcomes in the future, whether it's our children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren. we must be very active in participating in the emerging technology. Many of us don't know how to do stuff.
Thank you so much. We got to do that. And you wrote it. You were the next one I was going to read. Or, before you, thank you for articulating it even better than it's written, because you expatiated it. So we all have to learn that technology so that we can know exactly what to give to our children. iPhone, Ola said, as parents, we need to do serious rethink. Most of us have lost the positive cultural values we had and imbibed a lot of Western values that have not helped with raising our children. And Dr. Leah said, we must truly come to terms with the fact that it is not just that we are in a different country, but times are changing. We must seek, maintain, and sustain those values that will make them morally sound. Things may change and vary, but the morality make us sane and human never change. He also said you can be friendly with your kids. Yeah, I read that before, but you are not their friend. They will eventually thank you for being their parent. I agree with that 100%. So Dr. Ajay said, thanks so much, Dr. L, for the great presentation. Ayeko. Regarding reflection and resetting, are we recognizing the need for revising constitutional clauses that have become obsolete? This might involve deeper discussion, but let's briefly consider how we can approach this matter in general. Are we recognizing the need for revising constitutional clauses?
Is that for me?
Yeah, it's yours.
Well, I don't do constitutions. I don't know what constitution is referring to, but I do know that definitely we have to readjust a lot of things. The more you reflect, the more you see the need to change things. I cannot speak to constitution because that's not my specialty, but whatever needs to be changed, right? And I would pivot back on what someone said about, our children are being here technology and then our values and, we're worrying about values and all of that. But one thing I know is our children, they are caught between two cultures, which is why it's important for us to actually have the facts to the things we're saying. And when they come to us, we are able to bridge the gap for them. A bridge helps to connect. A stumbling block stops you from progressing, right? So we ought to be the bridge because we are the ones that have lived in a different culture and have come here. And for a lot of us, our children are only exposed mainly to this culture. So we ought to be a bridge. We ought to be the one that connects our children to the two different cultures so they don't become bipolar, right? Because as parents, there's a lot of confusion. They're told one thing in the household, they go to school, they go around them, is something completely different. And when they come to ask us questions, we cannot even provide them a foundation for the things we're telling them. Whether it's scripture, and I consider myself a believer, but even when it comes to that, we have the habit of taking scriptures out of context and using it as a weapon to destroy rather than a tool to reshape or to build people. So if we are going to quote things, let us look at both the old and the new. Let us look at the context of it. The real context, certain things that were okay in the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. If you only read the Old Testament, that's what you're going to know, right? Animal sacrifices. Those are the things you're going to know in the Old Testament if you're stuck on that. But if you cross over to the New Testament and you read, you would see that certain things are eliminated. But if you don't read the full context, you're going to be focused on just one thing and you're going to lose out on a lot of things and we're going to confuse ourselves and our children. We ought to tell the full story. We ought to tell the full story of things and put things in perspective because our children are reading, they are doing their research and we are not. And so they're coming to us and we can't answer them. So there's that principle of doing our homework cuts across whether it's constitution, whether it's our faith, is the work we do, the careers we want them to pursue. you know, for us, they told us be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an accountant, or else, right? That's what we're told. But you can't say that to your children now. But if you look behind it, our parents were saying that to us because they believed in that time, those are the professions that matter, that will secure you, that will make you feel like you're somebody and all of that. So that principle, you can carry it across. But today, there's so many other things you can do that you can still be secure. And it's not necessarily one of these three things. Lots of other things, right? So it's a matter of shifting the conversation to what matters, the reasons behind it, being true, having the answers, and being willing to have a discussion on any topic with our children, whether we believe. I think it's one thing to understand your child, it's another thing to agree with them. A lot of the times we are afraid to understand their perspective because we feel like once you understand their perspective, you have to agree with them. They're not necessarily the same. I can understand your perspective and still disagree with you. But at least I'm inviting you to a conversation. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. I'm being open-ended. I'm asking open-ended questions. A lot of us know when you're doing research and you ask open-ended questions, you're more likely to get a lot more information, textual information, than when it's close-ended and it's yes or no, right? Sometimes the answer is in between or something else. But if it's close-ended, I'm not going to tell you. You're not inviting me to a conversation. But if it's qualitative, it's open-ended, I'm going to tell you a lot more things. You get a whole textual perception of things that are happening because it's open-ended and I feel invited. How many of our children feel invited to discussions, like really, really invited for us to even understand what they're saying, even if we don't agree? So it's a learning process, important process for us across, whether it's constitution, whether it's school, every area of our life, we have to reflect, we have to reset, we need to be open-minded. And you don't have to agree, but you ought to invite people, especially your children. You ought to invite them or let them feel invited to the discussion because they are part of the team. And they ought to be able to speak their minds even if we don't like it. But they need to have that space to be able to do that. It's it's extremely critical. If we don't provide for them, something or someone will. That is a scary reality. If you don't do it, someone else is willing to do it 10 times more.
And it will be social media. And there's a lot on social media, that they don't need to emulate. You're right. Attorney Richard Williams said, very interesting topic and great presentation by Dr. Oil. Kudos to all the other contributors. Thank you. And thank you, sir. Dr. Ajay posted Genesis 48:14 to 16 on what Madam VP was talking about. But Jacob crossed his hands and put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, even though he was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh. Manasseh was the older brother, and that was where they thought he would put the right hand. Because again, like I said earlier, that's the reason for this left hand issue. People believe the left hand is bad. And like you said, Dr. Luguterah, we use the left hand to wipe our behinds, and because it is believed to be bad. When you put the right hand was expected to be put on the head of the first one, because it's supposed to get the blessing of the leader. But Jacob flipped it. Then Dr. Izugu wrote that the Bible in Proverbs 3:16 tells us that wisdom has long life in her right hand and riches and honor in her left hand. So we that are ambidextrous, we have both. When I saw that, I was very excited. Yes. So you left-handed people, Dr. Luguterah, you have the riches and honor in your left hand. You right-handed ones, yes. You have wisdom in your right hand, right? No, long life. You have long life in your right hand we ambidextrous people, we have both. I had to repeat that. So Dr. Luya said, it is okay to be civilized, but don't have to be westernized. And Olatomi said, actually, the issue of the left hand is no longer as bad in Nigeria, that people are better informed, even the uneducated. And so it's not that bad anymore. So that's good. Dr. Luya also said there are traditional values that become obsolete as we evolve. Killing of twins, genital mutilation, tribal marks, certain birth practices, open-mindedness, and pursuing the platforms for common understanding. And that is true. A lot of those things are now obsolete. It's right. Some things are dying, and those are the constitutional things. Okay. Ms. Darlene Kane says, a brother writes with both ends, ambidextrous, So fantastic. This has been awesome. And I just want to say, please remember to purchase Dr. Mercy Luguterah's book. Someone Like Me is $14 and change. I just bought it on Amazon, as I said earlier, if you were not on the platform at that time. And she has 2 other books for children that she had posted earlier. If you just go online and Google Mercy Luguterah, you will see all her books, the 3 books. The earlier 2 books are geared towards children, and this 3rd one is for us. It's what we are discussing tonight. We all need this book. We need this book. So purchase it. Let's learn more. Let's grow together. Let's reset after reflecting. So thank you so much. Dr. Luguterah, before I ask you to give us your closing spiel, I just want to share something very important. Medical Mondays family, here I come again. But this time is really, really serious and urgent. We have final year master's student, law student at Syracuse. She's doing a master's at law. This is her last semester. This is January. She's graduating in May 2024. This is the beautiful, our own daughter. I fondly call her Francine. Her name is Francisca. She Ndubisi Francisca Amarachi. She's a foreign student on F1 visa. Things happen. I've seen this happen to me before in the United States, where your parents are sending money and something happens, they can't anymore. The school was threatening to kick her out, report her to immigration and deport her, kick her out and deport her. If she's kicked out, she's no more on F1 visa, so she will be deported. She owed $14,701, and we have come together and raised money that she has sent to the school. We need to come up with $6,500 ASAP, like yesterday, to keep this precious girl in school. It would be a shame. It would be, I don't even know the word for it, if we all sit back and this girl is deported. That would be, it would be a failure on our part, I think. So we've chatted with Nigerian Center. Nigerian Center wrote a letter to the school to at least allow her to register, and thank God they honored the letter. In exchange that we're going to raise the funds and pay it. So that no money is taken out of the contribution, because when contributions are made on the website, a certain percentage, I think it's 4%, is taken out of it. Nigerian Center has agreed that we use their Zelle to please raise money for this girl. The Zelle information is info@nigeriancenter.org. And for credit card, email Nigerian Center, and then they will tell you the process to use the credit card. But then there will be a 4% charge processing fee to you. Please help us. I will send this out by email also. I'm asking that as Medical Mondays family, that we do one of the things we do best. You know, we do a lot of things very well, learning, teaching, you know, getting each other's back, supporting each other. You know, one of the things we do also is, you know, stepping up and meeting the needs of people in our communities. This is not something we'll be doing all the time. We're already discussing, debating, you know, trying to figure out at NAPAC, Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, how we can, you know, not get into this kind of situation again, because these kinds of things may come up again, and we don't want to run to you every time, or we don't want to be dipping into our pockets every time. We're looking for long-term solution to, you know, have funding for situations like this. But for this one, it's an emergency. Kindly assist. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Veronica, for posting this. Please take pictures. I would also send it by email. I'm going to send it by WhatsApp also. Expect it. I'm going to do it. Please, let's raise this money. It's not a lot. I'm thinking, you know, if, geez.
Welcome. So Dr. O, I already PDF it to you, so you can forward it to Dr. O Mondays.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it so much. God bless you.
Amen. Bless you too. Thank you for a marvelous night.
Thank you. So, Dr. Luguterah, kindly give us your closing remarks. It's been an awesome conversation. We have to continue it at some other time.
Let me respond to someone. I think, you know, when we talk about reflecting and resetting, it is helpful when we approach it open-minded. You cannot change what you continue to defend, but you can change something that you are willing to learn more about and to make adjustment as needed. So, and for every one of us, at certain stage in our life, the more we mature, the more we want to be sure of certain things. You want to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And like I said at the beginning, no one lives in a house for 30 years and doesn't change something. Sometimes you change the color, you change the carpet, you change the furniture, you change something. You may not necessarily break down the entire house, but you might renovate something, you might rebuild. And sometimes there were maybe positive things we used to do, but we let go. We ought to return to those. And maybe the things we're doing now that are not helping us, we thought it might be helpful, but it's not helping our family. Those things we need to let go. And all of us knows those areas where we can improve upon. And more than anything, choose yourself, choose your mind, choose your wellness, choose peace, choose love, choose self-care, right? Make sure that your deposits always exceed your withdrawals, no matter what you do. Because when your withdrawals exceed your deposits, you're going to be depleted, you're going to be in a state of emotional NSF, and you're going to launch out on people. You're not going to be able to have a good human experience. So do take the time to reflect and to identify those things that are deposits. Do more of them, draw closer to them. Those things that are withdrawals, try to limit them. And I leave you with a quote: find your place of serenity and visit very often. Whatever it is that gives you real peace and real fulfillment, make sure that you familiarize yourself with that space or that place, so that this 2024 can be a better year for you in terms of self-care and all those things that make you a better version of yourself, so you can turn around to be a better version for your family, for your kids, for your relatives, for your community, for the world at large. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you. This is fantastic. Dr. Ajagwe says, thanks so much, Dr. Luguterah, for the illuminating and engaging discussion. Blessings always. And we all echo that. Thank you. God bless you all. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you.